Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy, and welcome back to a brand new movie review. I'm Chris Garner, joined once again with George, and in anticipation for M. Night Shyamalan's new movie Glass, which I believe is already out in cinemas now, I think, isn't it? But both of us are seeing it tomorrow. We're going to go way, way back, and we're going to give our review on Unbreakable and Split, which is now a very weird trilogy. I don't know if it was ever intended to be a trilogy. I can't believe that it ever was. But you know more about the behind the scenes of some of these movies. We're going to get into it now. But how are you doing tonight, George?
I'm very well. I'm back as I have been recently. I'm trying to make myself be on here a little bit more. So fingers crossed in the future I can make a polite announcement about all that. But yeah, neither of us have seen either Unbreakable or Split. Well, none of us have seen Glass yet either. A very weird one. So very rarely have we not seen two hyped up films. Both of us not seen them.
Well, we've seen them now. Like, we should put that out there. Like, we've seen them now. Like a blind review where we haven't seen the movie, but yeah, no, we were really, really late to these films.
And I think Unbreakable is a film for myself that goes back a couple of years of people telling me you'd really like this. I'd always seen. I think I've seen like the opening scene from it. I think I'd heard a lot. Everyone's like, "You'd love this. You love this. It's your type of film." It was on my Netflix list for a couple of years, and Netflix got rid of it. And then when Split came out, I didn't see Split on release. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, it ties into Unbreakable." Spoilers. And there's going to be a third one to tie it all together. And then when that broke on these, I think we and you had both talking about that. We're just going to wait till Glass comes out and then do a trilogy viewing, kind of.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it was actually a lot better because I feel more hyped up for Glass tomorrow now.
Yeah, well, I mean, you watched them over a couple of days, didn't you? I did Unbreakable straight into Split. I was going to spread them over a couple of days, and I kept watching the trailers for Split, and it looks so interesting. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to watch back to back. But kind of like you, especially with Unbreakable more so than Split, it's been a movie for years people have been telling me to watch. I think even my friend went to the lengths of giving me the VHS. This is going back probably about, I don't know, like 8 years or something like that, maybe more. He gave me the video and said, watch this movie. And I've always had a hard time if like someone like forces a movie on me and like lends me a copy of something, I very rarely ever watch it. I don't know. I always have to be in the right mindset to watch something. So Unbreakable, of course, went unwatched until yesterday. And no, it felt good watching both of them back to back. Sort of now that I know we had that end goal that Glass was coming out, we need to see this and we need to backtrack. And I remember when the trailers came out for Split, it looked interesting. McAvoy's performance in the trailer alone looked absolutely phenomenal. Like, I am a horror fan, so it looked like my kind of movie. But as you said, like when people said that it tied into Unbreakable, I thought, well, I know it's kind of a standalone sequel, but I can't, out of good consciousness, go and see Split without having seen Unbreakable first. We see a lot of movies, never got around to it until yesterday. So, yeah, we're going to kick off with Unbreakable. We don't have a plan for this at all, so we're just going to sort of like rattle through our initial opinions on it and stuff like that and read into it a little bit. But so I knew it was roughly based around superheroes. I didn't realize, you know, what the movie was about. I really didn't know anything of what the movie was about, but I know that the theme of superheroes played into it. But having looked at this movie, and you could read so much into this movie, and we're going to do it, you know, marginally because we also need to talk about Split. This movie coming out in 2000 was so ahead of its time. Like, that was just sort of the advent of when superhero movies were starting to, you know, come into the fold again. You would have X-Men. 2 years later, you'd have Spider-Man. But can you imagine a movie like this coming out now? Now, I know we've got Glass, but this was really quite remarkable as a movie.
I think that's what kind of makes it not necessarily stand out from the crowd, because it's not a superhero film, but it kind of is. Like, it's really hard to give it. I mean, obviously, it's been about 18 years, 19 years now. The concept of it is, when you say light years ahead of its time, I mean, Spider-Man came out in 2001. X-Men was, what, 2000? So this came out at a point where, you know, it was vaguely about to begin. It was about to, you know, when I say begin, I don't mean, you know, the MCU. I mean making a blockbuster-sized film about superheroes that was good.
I mean, you'd had like decades before you'd had Superman and Batman, but since then it had dipped down again, and it was just about to go into that resurgence.
Exactly. But the theme of the comics being popular with it was not there. That is only until, I guess, the last 10 years since Dark Knight and MCU's kicked into things. Like the actual comic angle of it all had kicked in. Now, Shyamalan must have been a big comic fan, but it's remarkable to watch it today, because I started thinking, you know, you wouldn't think this would have come out in 2000. You would have think someone would have made this. A bit like how Kingsman's like sort of postmodern, that with Kingsman, you look at the Kingsman film, and that's so inspired by all the Bond films before you. It's done its own thing. You would think if that you show that to someone tomorrow that doesn't know anything, they'd think, oh, is this made because it's now popular for like Marvel and DC? Like, no. This was made before they were popular. Before they, I mean, there were franchises as you just said, but there wasn't like the franchises that the universe is all of that malarkey. And it's great. I mean, you say superhero film, and it's still a drama. There's no big action set pieces. There's no big fight scene. There's none of this. It's primarily a character-based film about Bruce Willis learning that. I mean, not even that he's got superhuman. Well, it's basically just about Bruce Willis realizing that he is unbreakable.
Yeah.
And as this trilogy goes, the more I've sort of watched them this week and learned about it, that of this, they're calling it the Eastrail 177 trilogy because of the train crash, which is surely that's not a real term. Each film is named after one of the protagonists. So you've got Bruce Willis is Unbreakable, James McAvoy is Split, and Sam Jackson is Mr. Glass.
Yeah.
And I think as far as the trilogy goes, I mean, it's so crazy that, I've seen videos, they're saying, oh yeah, we've gone over this about 20 years ago. I was like, well, they always say things like that. But actually, I was doing a bit of research, and Shyamalan, he wanted to make Unbreakable 2. The producer said no. Unbreakable didn't make enough money. Apparently, it's something he's wanted to do for a while. And then Split came out, and the way I see it, they told him he could do Unbreakable. Apologies, they could do Glass, while the Unbreakable sequel of Split worked. Because, I mean, with the spoilers, I should really talk about some more tomorrow. The concept of the character in Split, the Horde, was the original villain for Unbreakable 2, which basically is Glass. So he clearly had this idea. And I mean, I'll definitely get into this talk tomorrow, especially when we get to the Split half of things. But when you look at the end of Split, not that cameo, I mean, until the word Split comes up, knowing it's connected, you get a little bit more in there. I'll talk about that later on. But I just loved Unbreakable. I thought it was a very different type of film. It was a drama with the comic book sort of edge to it. And I was just fascinated learning more about Bruce Willis. I thought, it wasn't particularly great, but Bruce Willis played what he had to well. The character worked for being Bruce Willis. I thought Sam Jackson had great dynamics with him. Of course, they've done Die Hard 3 at this point. They've done Pulp Fiction at this point. It's the third time in a couple of years those two have been together. But I just loved it. And I said this to you before, but I've not seen many M. Night Shyamalan films. So, I mean, I've seen these two. I think I've only seen these two. So he's got a reputation, obviously, for twists, for the meme that he was dubbed the next Spielberg after his great films, first couple of films. Then it kind of dipped down. When I say dip down, I say drop down, and he's on the rise again. And I think it's very intriguing because, to be fair to him, the films he does, they're at least the majority of them are original to a point where. You got like Airbender, I guess, but he wants to do something interesting. I'll always give someone credit that's trying to do something like that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to bring up his career as well, in that before this, he made a couple of movies before this, but the main one that was sort of the walk away, the one that got everyone talking, was 1999's Sixth Sense, also with Bruce Willis, and that kind of put his name on the map. And then he followed this up with Unbreakable, and I think it was having those two movies back to back where you do get a lot of people talking. And although Unbreakable, it did make more than its budget. It did make money, but it probably wasn't the walkaway success. It did build up that cult following over time and got a lot of people talking. And then he made Signs, which I have seen, and then like The Village, and then, as you said, his career did dip, and it's good to see that it's slowly picking itself back up, especially after you've hit rock bottom with The Last Airbender, for example. But I mean, he had the idea for this. I think he was working on the script, wasn't he, around the time he was either wrapping up filming or during filming of The Sixth Sense. He had in mind that he wanted Bruce Willis to be the main character. He had in mind that he wanted Samuel Jackson to be the arch enemy. So I'm really glad that, if he did write the script with those two actors in mind, that he did, get those, because you have to think about Samuel Jackson as well. He's still a big superstar now, but back in, this time as well, he was almost at his peak, Samuel Jackson. So to get two of those stars of that caliber as well. And what I love about the filmmaking is, as you said, you can tell that M. Night is a big comic book fan. The story structure, it is kind of like an origin story. And there are moments in the film where It's so weird. It is a superhero film. It is, because I mean, obviously the characters got powers, but they all, and the tone of the movie as well, because you like get wrapped up in like the family dynamic with Bruce Willis. It felt so grounded. It didn't feel like a completely over the top superhero film, if that makes sense. As I said, like despite him having powers, but you have like the origin story. You have the moment in the film. We're going to get into like slightly spoilers, but I'm not going to go massive in depth into it, where we get a flashback where he's been in a car crash and he lifts the car up, and it's very much like, say, Superman's first ever comic book, where it's that image of him lifting the car above his head. Kind of reminded me of stuff like that. There's a shot of like Active Comics, isn't it? Which I'm assuming is a take on Action Comics, wasn't it? Which was like the DC stuff. Loads of stuff like that. Just the framing of the film as well. The color schemes as well. Like, there's a whole purple theme, which seems to be a running thing with Samuel Jackson, especially when we get to the likes of Mace Windu. And you've got green for the good guy. So there's loads of little things like this, just the use of color, the use of framing and the shot, and the sense that you're ultimately watching an origin story for a superhero as well as his arch nemesis. And you said like there's no like big massive action scenes in there, which I'm actually really grateful for. And I'm really hoping that that's also the case with Glass. I want it to stick with the same tone, hopefully. But you almost have like, it felt like a very like Charles Xavier Magneto moment.
Yeah, that's what. Just the other way around in terms of abilities to walk.
but it's more of like a battle of wits more than like an actual physical altercation, and I think that totally works for it.
And there's a friendship within there. Granted, obviously, that the spoilers, the big twist is that Sam Jackson organized. His character, he organizes all these mass terrorist attacks because his entire life's goal has been to find the opposite of him. He is brittle, he breaks, he is glass. He needs to find the unbreakable, and it's such an interesting dynamic. And what it reminded me of, not a villain that has a way with words, but you understand, like similar to a Thanos, you understand his philosophies, his ideas.
Well, there's an empathy there with him as well. Like you see him as a kid. Like you do see these two heroes, like they're behind this. They're growing up. Essentially, their origin story sort of coast along each other. Very different circumstances, but ultimately, it's that symbiosis. It's whenever you have a good hero and a good villain, they're always like tied in with their, they ultimately want the same thing or something similar, but it's just their means and ways of doing it.
It's a polar opposite. It's the similarities and difference, and I think that's what makes great sort of duos on screen. And these guys had it together. I think they had great chemistry. Especially, I don't rate Bruce Willis as an actor. I love him, but I said I like Die Hard. I like him in some things, but I don't. Terms of, I wouldn't say this is a great performance. I'd say it's a great character for him in the politest possible way. And I think Sam Jackson was great in this film as well. But there was something about them where it just clicked, and it worked. I think Shyamalan did great to get them together. He got the right cast. I couldn't imagine anyone doing any of those other roles. I think that the year this came out was right. This had been made today, it would have got absolutely annihilated for not having big set pieces in, for not showing his strength by pulling a helicopter to a wall or something like that. The only time we've seen him use his strength is the car door, which is a flashback from like 20 years before. I really enjoyed it, and the ending, I thought, it was so anticlimactic, it worked, and I think that's why we have a slight differ, but it just ends. And we all know Shyamalan's songs. He even says at the start of the film, there's a twist in this one. It just ends like that, and you're like, oh. And I loved it because it's not what I expected. Not even a twist, that just the manner of the circumstances. I knew that Glass was the villain, but it's about that journey, and it's the revelation, you are the hero, I am the villain. I know my place the same way you know your place now. And I thought it was chilling because it's correct. This is a guy that's obsessed with comics. And I think one thing I want to applaud this film for is that in that era of the late 90s, we'd have thought of like comic book readers and whatnot. You'd probably think of like the guy from The Simpsons, the chubby one, the comic book store. To go in and I don't want to make this politically correct, but to go and get like a black guy, be Sam Jackson, be disabled, that is not your typical stereotypical media, I guess, interpretation of like comic book readers. And I think that's why it worked, because if it was that really morbidly obese white guy with a giant beard, long hair, you know what I mean? If it was that Simpsons guy, then it's kind of then you wouldn't take it seriously. But the fact that he runs an art gallery about comics, there was something really neat about Sam Jackson's character tying it all together. And I think, again, it's like Charles Manning, there's a friendship in there. this Sam Jackson has told Bruce Willis about his powers. He's learned him. He's sort of woke him up into, not woke him up, but Bruce Willis has this respect for him because he has shown him, he's explained it and whatnot. But then he is ultimately the villain. I think that gives it a fascinating angle going into Glass.
Yeah, and like that whole dialogue at the end of the movie is fantastic. Now, if anyone's seen Unbreakable, the very end of it, you know what I'm talking about. There's like a little text screen that comes up twice. There's like a freeze frame of the film. The text comes up and it kind of explains events that happened after that moment, which I'm always really against. I'm like, just show, don't tell. I'd rather them, show the police turning up and show us, putting them away or whatever happens. So that did take me out at the end in a little bit. I would have rather just like the dialogue, speak for itself, the movie speak for itself, and then we pick up the events of what happened in the interim with, well, even you get like a line drop at the end of Split or picking up the events in Glass. But yeah, no, inherently why I liked it is, yes, it is a superhero film, and yes, it does have a lot of the, the tropes of a superhero or origin story, a superhero character. But inherently, if you strip all that stuff away, it's literally just a story of about someone discovering who they are. Like, they're really, morbidly fucking depressed throughout this entire movie. They've got like family trouble, spouse trouble. He's a father. He's trying to find his place in the world, kind of working a dead-end job. He's not happy. And then through this friendship with Samuel Jackson, he's able to discover who he is. And also through that friendship, Samuel Jackson also discovers his place. And he has that really, although the atrocities that he's committed, like, you do kind of feel sorry for him, where he says, like, going through life not knowing, I can't remember exactly what he says, going through life not knowing who you are, it's one of the loneliest feelings, or like it's horrible feeling. And you do feel sorry for him. So the more we've talked about it, because I liked it, but I was fairly lukewarm on it when I first watched it, especially watching Split straight afterwards. I did think that Split was the more entertaining movie out of the two. But I think in terms of, how much we're talking about this now, we're going to move on to Split now, but like, there's so much to talk about this. And I mean, this could be its own like hour-long review if we were going to go like so into it and compare it to like all the different superhero things. But no, I had a blast with it. And talking about it more now, I definitely do think that Unbreakable is the strongest of the two films, unquestionably. Very, very briefly as well, and this is going to tie into my next point, the music, James Newton Howard, loved the score to Unbreakable, and it was nice to see them use that little very sort of, I know it was a 2000s movie, but it sounded very 90s. It was like the 90s as they were segueing into the 2000s. Instantly recognizable at the end of Split. But no, I definitely recommend Unbreakable if you're a superhero fan and you haven't seen it. It's a very different kind of superhero movie, but I don't, especially considering in the movie environment we are in now with like the MCU and everything like that, I think there's definitely, you could probably appreciate this movie more now than people did back then. And I think that's absolutely what happened. But yeah, we'll move on to Split now, unless you have anything you want to round off with Unbreakable.
I loved it. I'm kind of shocked I hadn't seen it that much earlier. Well worth watching if anyone hasn't already, I guess is a fair way to say it, but definitely something ahead of its time. And that I think I feel that it's one of those films that every time you watch it, it would probably get better. And I don't mean that disrespectfully upon a first viewing, but I feel that there's, without sounding snobby either, you're the same as me. We both study sort of film and media. This is a kind of film you could see people writing essays about, especially in the current climate as well. It's something that is going to stick with you. And the more of these comic book films come out, I think the higher in regard I'm going to have that as well. So I'm very intrigued to see it again.
So fast forward to 16 years later, that's no short time between sequels. Split comes out. Now, I talked about the trailers coming out, looked very intriguing. I heard it was tied in vaguely somehow to Unbreakable, so I held off on it. But I love a good psychological thriller. I love my horror films. Now, you're very hesitant towards those films, like you don't really usually connect with them. So I want to hear from you first on this one, because you were sort of like, you were getting towards the end of the film and you were messaging me saying this movie is very weird. But how did you handle it in terms of it being that particular genre that you don't really connect with usually?
It didn't feel like a horror film until I think it's fair to go in. I think I texted you this as well. This is exactly like Get Up. Not Get Up, but Get Out. I went in being told it's a horror film, and I watched that first hour and 20, and it felt like a psychological thriller. Now, I love a psychological thriller. Anything that messes with the head, and I don't mean like horror, like tropes, jump scares, whatnot. Anything that can keep you thinking and can mess you up there is something that's very much worth the while. That's my kind of film. It didn't feel like a horror, again, like Get Out, until the last 30 minutes. And the issue with these films is that when they start as psychological thrillers, they turn into horrors because it's almost jump genre. I know they're vaguely similar. I think there's a big difference, but I completely understand what people say. It jumps genre, and when you jump a genre midway through a film, you lose not your integrity. That's the completely wrong word. You lose what you began with. You basically gripped everyone in, and then you jump for the predictable in the hope that something predictable might be unpredictable. So I didn't get horror vibes from Split until the last half hour, and it didn't even feel like a horror. Then it just felt, the usual. We've got the last woman standing, again, a horror cliche. There's foreshadowing, which I know you messaged me about as well. It's very obvious what's going to happen. Also, I knew that glass was going to be a thing, so I didn't really have any stakes going in about what the ending could be. But Split's a weird one. I personally watched it mainly, obviously for Glass, but James Mac. I think I said to you, we don't do scores, never have, but I'd say this is a solid 6, but McAvoy's a perfect 10.
Yeah,
this is James McAvoy's film. I look at his career. I didn't think I'd see something that could take him away being from like Magneto, Charles Xavier, but seeing this, if there was any highlight of him going bold for X-Men, it's because he got to do this while still bold. Brinsley just put, you should call it his acting reel. My word, that's the perfect description. He's 24 characters, but you could show the 5 different scenes. There's multiple scenes, obviously, to show personalities, but there's at least 4 great scenes with him as different roles, different personas, and it's just magnificent. He was a joy to watch. Every scene he was in was great, and then it gets that build up, but just watching him was fascinating, and his mannerisms of each one.
Yeah, no, I'll start by talking about McAvoy because it really, he dominates this. He really is the saving grace of this movie, in my opinion. And although you don't get to see, I think we're definitely going to see more of his personalities when we come to Glass, judging from the trailer. There was that part of me that really wanted to see him just go straight into all 20, was it 23? I think it's 23 personas, isn't it? You do want to see him just segue into them all. And you do get a lot of them. There's some great scenes, especially towards the end where he's in the mirror and the camera keeps moving to the side and back again. It's almost like you're switching to a different person. You very much are. And that's all down to his acting. I got that from the trailer. I got that from the movie. And that was the one aspect of it because I haven't seen a movie that really dealt with this kind of stuff, or at least in this kind of genre, this real psychological horror where essentially the plot, for anyone who doesn't know, 3 teenage girls are kidnapped by this guy with 23 different personalities. And then as the movie goes on, you discover this mystery that there might be a 24th personality called the Beast. And you're right, the last half hour, it does segue into those horror tropes where, it's kind of it's funny talking about this now because when Cabin in the Woods comes out, it was kind of like a pastiche and just really, it was decoded all of the horror tropes. You have your one girl survivor kind of thing at the end, fleeing from the killer and this dirty basement and everything like that. And you are kind of rooting for her. You do want to see her get out of it, but that's when it did segue more into a horror. But I'll give M. Night Shyamalan props in that, yes, this is a sequel. This is kind of a standalone sequel to Unbreakable, but it's so different in tone. It does kind of bring it back into it. And obviously we're going to have the amalgamation with Glass, but I'm kind of grateful that this stands on its own. If you literally turn this movie off before the last minute or so of the film, you've got a great standalone film. So I don't know how people, if Brinsley, for example, if you saw this movie when it came out, how did audiences go over with this movie? When it hit that ending and they saw Bruce Willis, did they know that it tied into Unbreakable? Was Unbreakable a film that people would have seen going into this? Because the marketing for this movie was pretty much just flat out, this is a horror movie. And it wasn't that was it.
Now, what I've seen of this, I remember when this film came out, it was everywhere that, oh my God, Split's came to Unbreakable, Split's came to Unbreakable. And I remember reading, I think it might have been Dan Merritt, if anyone knows him, a review I really like. I remember he was tweeting about it, goes, oh my God, it connects to Unbreakable and it's a good film. It's a good M. Night Shyamalan film, but it connects. And, that was a big intrigue. And I must have read about a month ago, it's tied into it, like basically a credit scene, but not at the credits, right slap bang at the end. And that's the big Shyamalan twist, is that it's that. And I remember being on the internet, it was just everywhere. This all ties into Unbreakable. No one ever knew. It was never marketed as that. This was Split. This was this. This was this McAvoy film, this intense psychological horror thriller. And to be tied in. And you're right, you know, you can watch that, you wouldn't have you have an absolute clue, but it makes it more intriguing for tomorrow. And like what I kind of spoke about earlier was that Glass is the three personas of these three films. You know, you've had Bruce Willis and Sam Jackson develop their character. You've kind of, I mean, we say we've developed the character of well, they call him the Horde, don't they? But everyone's saying James McAvoy. You know, we've probably seen 6 personas properly, if that. There's another 17. Like we've seen a lot of him. We know a bit about his background. All 3 of these characters are developed now, which is going to make Glass so fascinating. But what I feel that is that Glass is the original pitch. I mean, you know, the original idea for he wanted the character of the Horde to be a villain in Unbreakable 2 for Bruce Willis, and I think, you know, the Beast, what ties into Unbreakable is what I was trying to point out, is that when he becomes the Beast, he's like immortal. You know, you have when we said that the polar opposite of Unbreakable, as in Bruce Willis' character being Glass, which is the shatter of Sam Jackson, we've now got, you know, Bruce Willis's character of, you know, being Unbreakable, can't have any bones broken, can't get hurt, anything like that. And we've now gone up against the Beast, who can seemingly, you know, torture people, kill people, eat people. So I think it's got a very good development. It's almost like a triangle of character development. I just want to see how it is. I'm intrigued, but I think you could, looking at the end of Split, knowing it's connected, you can see pointers. Not, I mean, as in you can't see it being connected, but if you look back, knowing it's connected, you can see how it fits into the mold for Glass. I think is a fair way of saying
it's kind of like the concept is almost like the delusion of grandeur kind of thing. I think that's brought up a lot in terms of like the whole, you know, when she's like leading the seminar in this film, the therapist he goes to, she talks about delusions of grandeur and that superhero complex, and it looks like we're going to see that more in Glass. I don't know if you've seen the trailer for Glass. Did you say you've seen it?
I saw one trailer, but I've seen a little bit, so I know I've seen like some pictures and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I'm just intrigued to see how it gets worked.
The official trailer 1 opens with this psychiatrist who specializes in like the superhero complex that people have, and she's interviewing all 3 of them sat in the room. So I think that's inherently the theme, but obviously he dials it up and like blends it into horror. So it is quite good in that regard. But I agree with what Brinsley's saying as well. Like in terms of performance, it's great. The film itself is fine, but the performance definitely carries it. I was just reading a bit about the production. Apparently, Joaquin Phoenix was originally cast to play Kevin's character. I could see him doing it though. Like,
I don't know. I think Joaquin Phoenix is unreal, but I couldn't see him doing sort of. When I say different characters, I couldn't see Joaquin Phoenix doing. How do I describe it? Joaquin Phoenix he can play multiple characters. Oh, how's this? I'm trying to not diss him as an actor because he's unreal. I can't see him doing the different personas in the way that James McAvoy thing. I think we see James McAvoy, but we've seen such different sides James McAvoy. With Joaquin Phoenix, we see different sides to him in different roles. Joaquin Phoenix has always had that superior edge. It's something you'd expect from Joaquin Phoenix, whereas you don't expect it from McAvoy, which makes it even more intense because we've not. I mean, he's a great actor, but we've not really seen that intensity from him. Well, probably not since Shameless, if any Americans know what that is. But I couldn't have seen Joaquin. I could see him doing it, but I couldn't see him doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely for the more threatening characters, you know, like I can absolutely see him doing that, but maybe like the softer characters, perhaps not so much. But apparently, very briefly, and then we'll round off because I know we want to keep this brief, but Shyamalan had ideas for this, or the idea of Kevin, I believe, was going to be in the original draft of Unbreakable. He felt like the plot kind of skewed off, though, when he was introduced, so we removed it because it balanced the movie out better without him in there. But apparently he did bring some story ideas that he had for Kevin's character around the time of Unbreakable and did put it in the Split movie. What those are inherently, I don't know. But when I was watching Unbreakable, knowing the plot of Split, there's a moment where Bruce Willis follows a guy who kidnaps women and brings them to the house. And the whole action beat there. So I was watching the movie and thinking, like, I really hope that 3/4 of the way through Split, we're not going to have that moment where Bruce Willis comes in and it turns out that the James McAvoy character was meant to be that guy from Unbreakable, because obviously it looks nothing like him. So thankfully, when that was resolved in Unbreakable, I knew it wasn't going to be connected in that way. But maybe those were the ideas he was talking about that he brought to the plot. I'm really not sure. But
no, I see what you mean.
It's kind of interesting how it's all worked out. You know, there's also a scene on Unbreakable, I think, where isn't one of the, because he sees visions, doesn't he, when he's in the like the subway terminal or wherever it is, he sees like possible atrocities that are about to happen. Isn't one of them like a kid getting abused or something like that?
There's one of a girl that I think gets raped.
There's an attempted rape one. There's the killer that like breaks into the house
and kills the dads.
I can't remember if there was another one, but some people, I saw some theories.
Yeah, no, there was a dad. There was a dad and a son, wasn't there?
So
I saw a mom and a son.
Yeah, that was it. And I saw some theories there that, oh, maybe Kevin's character was actually that kid from Unbreakable. I don't know. It's a fun theory. I don't think it works narratively in terms of the time, but it'd be a pretty cool theory. It's going to be interesting to see how this all culminates in Glass. Like, I wasn't hyped. Well, I kind of kept away from Glass in all honesty. Like, I knew I wanted to watch it. I knew we were going to be going to see it. Wanted to wait until we got these two. But having seen these two films back to back now, I can't wait to see the ending, because it almost feels like a trilogy that was never meant to happen, but is somehow here. It's such an interesting progression of a trilogy.
And I feel a bit spoiled as well that we kind of say like, oh yeah, imagine these people that had to wait. You know, we had to wait for the prequels as kids. You know, Harry Potter, we had to wait over 10 years. Imagine like watching Unbreakable in 2000, like loving it, and then 19 years later, you've got it. I couldn't process that. I mean, even the prequels to Episode 7, I feel weird about, because we were at the right age as we were kids turning into adults for between 3 and 7.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we haven't had the luxury of that 20-year gap between franchises that come back to us yet. You know, unless magically Spider-Man gets announced for.
Oh, don't.
But you see what I mean? We've not hit that point in our lives. I don't mean that to be like ageist, but nothing has happened yet, because all the films we've grown up with don't have 20-year sequels, because the sequels happen now, or they'll happen in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
And I think it would be a remarkable journey. And I'm excited for the day when we do get to go to a cinema to see these big sequel gaps when we remember the originals. Granted, we'll be like older, and it'll be like, oh god, how old do we feel?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's very interesting nonetheless. And I think fair play to anyone that's like watched this trilogy, stuck it out, and are buzzing for it, because fair play to Shyamalan as well.
Yeah, I mean, if he's been batting around these ideas since the time of Unbreakable, and he's only just got, you know, the chance to make them now, then fair play. Like, you can tell that, as you said, like, you know more about it than me, and you'll probably talk about it more tomorrow. Like, he had an idea for a sequel way back then. It didn't work out, but, you know, hopefully it all goes to plan. I have seen mixed things. I've tried to keep away from most reviews with Glass. I want to go in with an open mind with it, but I have seen some people saying that it's, you know, mixed to negative, but who knows? Like, I'm loving this trilogy, and now that I've seen the first two, like, you know, I'm all up to speed for Glass essentially, and I will be seeing it tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. I'm not exactly sure when we'll be going live for a review, whether it'll be Saturday or Sunday.
I'm seeing it at 11:40.
Ooh, so I've got that edge on you. I can spoil the twist ending for you. But yeah, no, essentially we will have a review at some point this weekend. So just, you know, follow us on Facebook or Twitter, like, you know, we'll post there, or hit the bell icon. That's probably the best way. You'll get a little notification when we do go live. But yeah, that'll conclude our reviews of Unbreakable and Split, I guess. Roll on Glass tomorrow. Thank you to Brinsley in the comments. It's great to see you again, man. Hope to see you on the review tomorrow if you can jump on for that one. And yeah, so I've already sold our social media links there. Do need to say that we are getting closer and closer to Oscar season as well. The movies are piling up so much. There are so many movies I need to see. I still need to see The Favourite. Mary Queen of Scots is out now as well. And that's just the rest of this month. We hit February, there's even more. So if you're a movie fan, please do hit that subscribe button. Stick with us, because there'll be much more content coming out very soon. And hopefully soon we will be back with another Battle of the Brackets episode. It's been very difficult to get everyone's schedules. We continue to try and get that off the ground. It will be back at some point. There'll be more trailer reactions from me. Thank you to everyone. Till the next video. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.